Now comes as what I would say is the ultimate test for what the NBA actually is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back 30 years.
Go for it.
30 years. Comments I made on shows that I hosted over the years when I was doing everyday talk radio and so forth. And it now really comes into play. At this point, 30 years ago, I said the NBA has been very fortunate over the last 15 years. So in other words, from 80 up to 95. And I said, they've either had Larry Bird or Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or a combination of
two plus of them.
Two out of the three in the finals. I said the test will be as to the popularity of the NBA is when they get a final that features Utah against Atlanta. I said, where it's Salt Lake City, one of the smaller markets. Atlanta's a market a lot of people don't really, outside of Atlanta, nobody really, cares about the Hawks. I said, that will be the test of the NBA. Well, Jordan kept getting to the final. And then the Lakers kept getting to the final. And they've Shaq and Kobe. And then LeBron went 10 straight years getting to the final. And then in getting to the final, part of it was going up against Steph Curry and the Warriors. And last year, they had the Celtics.
They had Celtics, and they had Luka, who was
But they had the Celtics,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
I'm talking brand here.
No, I know.
No offense. Luka's adorable, the whole thing. But, like, the brand of the Boston Celtics.
Yes.
Like, 18-time NBA champion. So people who love Larry Bird, like, knew, okay? They've always, so this is what they've had. This is the run they've had. Now they got this. Adam Silver says, well, he says, the NFL, when Green Bay plays Pittsburgh, they aren't two of the bigger markets. They, this is, great matchups are great matchups. No. Okay. This is not the National Football League where you can have Green Bay play the LA Chargers. Okay. It's because really the LA Chargers are not Los Angeles.
No.
Okay. They are so far down the awareness poll in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Okay. They aren't the Rams.
Nope.
Right. You could have the LA Chargers play the Green Bay Packers, and they're still going to get between 100 and 125 million viewers on Super Bowl Sunday. This isn't going to happen. Okay. This is not going to happen. It'll be interesting to see what draw they get out of it. It has nothing to do with the players. Has zero to do with the players. Halliburton is a superior talent. Okay? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a tremendous talent. Williams is a great talent. Holmgren's a great talent. Right? Siakam's been there, done that. This has nothing to do with the players, has nothing to do with the coaches or the organizations. It has to do with markets and who are these people. It is one thing for us to sit there and we know who the chess pieces are because we follow the sport. It's another thing to have the casual fans sit there and go, oh, who's on Oklahoma City? All right. And again, when Oklahoma City was in the finals years ago, when they played Miami, they had Kevin Durant. Because remember, they had moved from Seattle to Oklahoma City. I mean, people don't realize Durant started his career in Seattle.
He had a year in Seattle.
Right? And so they had Durant. All right. Now, nobody knew who Westbrook was at that point. And in the country, because LeBron was on the other side with Bosh and with Wade. So because they had LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, you got to watch the talent of Durant introduced to Westbrook and introduced to James Harden. Okay? His high school coach now works here at Penn State, Scott Pera. Got some great Harden stories the other day from him. Incredible. Misunderstood in many ways. But my point is that
you got to
now
build stars from LeBron.
Right? But in other words, what you have was, It wasn't just LeBron, but Wade
Yeah. And Bosch. It was the Heatles.
and Bosch. I mean, it was okay. We're gonna win. What did they say?
5,
Eight?
6, 7, 8.
Yeah, they won
9.
2. They won 2. But that's what you had, and the Heat had put together a persona of not just having LeBron with them, but that persona of people love LeBron. They love they loved Wade, and there was a whole bunch of people out there that disliked LeBron, disliked Wade. But what did the two sides have in common? They both watched.
People hate watch.
Okay, now there's nobody here to dislike, right?
No.
It's marginal as to how many people like. Okay, but there's nobody dislikes anybody. There's no bad guy in this, right? In this, and look. Not even remotely saying LeBron's a bad guy.
Yeah,
Wade's a bad guy.
but people like to hate.
Right. In other
and
words,
that's a
like,
part of it.
Is Tom Brady a bad guy? No. But is Tom Brady hated by a segment of the sporting population? Yeah, because he wins. Right. LeBron, because he wins. Okay. And let's be honest about it. Also, not only has he won, but he's also been opinionated. Right. Opinions bring with it polarizing thoughts, but everybody watches. They watch. Okay? There's no polarizing figure in this. There's nobody in this you dislike. There's nobody in this. Okay. Say you have the same matchup next year. You may have more people watching because they want to see maybe, hey, can X win a second in a row? Or, hey, look, you know what? I hope they lose. They won last year.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have that. Okay? You have two teams trying to win their first NBA titles out there, which is a nice storyline, but it doesn't resonate with the public. Okay, but you have 30 markets. You're going to hit it sometime when, of the 30 markets, 2 of them are in the category of like, really? That doesn't mean in Indianapolis, where they love basketball. I mean, it's interesting about what Rick Carlisle said. When it comes to basketball, there are 49 states, and then there's Indiana, which is great. Great line. But it's changed in 25 years. You did the Indiana trip, right?
Been to Indiana twice.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard Dick and I talking about this, but you land at the airport, you come out, you come out of the airport, that church, you make the right, and then start working your way toward Bloomington. I said to Dick, I said, check the driveways. You know what we didn't see in the driveways? Which we saw 25 years ago? Basketball hoops. We didn't see any in any of the driveways. I kind of felt like that was unusual. But Indiana is a great basketball state. Oklahoma is a great oil state. I worked a game, SMU in Oklahoma, because I was there for basketball for Penn State. And Penn State was going to play Oklahoma for the national championship. So this is when they had Bosworth, they had Holloway, they had Casillas, they had Barry Switzer. And then when the game was over with, I interviewed all those guys to preview the Orange Bowl. And Switzer was great. Because when we went down to the Orange Bowl, I did this show down there. And Switzer came out and goes, hey, I know you. I said, yeah. I said, hey, you have a couple minutes to come on the show? He says, Steve, I do. He says, yeah. He says, you and I got along great. Sure. So we sat down and did it. First call we got, guy says, I can't believe I'm talking to Barry Switzer. Right? But but I made a joke at some point when I was down there, because, you go in from the airport, from Oklahoma City Airport down to Norman, and there were oil derricks. And I said to somebody, says, they thought there was oil in the 50-yard line in this stadium. I said they'd have to play around it. But that's what they are. But that's what you have here. You have a generic final, not in talent, not in teamwork, but in brand.
Yep.
And you're going to have the diehards. They're always there no matter what. So there's going to be a base group that'll watch. You and I are 2 a part of that base. But I don't think there's enough intrigue to get a groundswell of casual fans to make up the difference compared to last year when you had Boston and Dallas, and and before that, a couple of years ago, you had Boston and Steph Curry and Golden State.
And it was like oh my gosh, Steph is here. I want to watch.
Right,
and then you have the Boston people like I want to hate on Boston. I want to watch against the Celtics.
Right, you had the brand.
multiple
You had the
crowds.
brand of the Warriors who had become a brand because of Draymond, because of
Steph and
Curry,
Clay.
because Klay Thompson was still there at the time against the brand of the Boston Celtics, who finally were back trying to win their 18th. The whole thing took a couple of years. They finally got it, but. This is, Denver, Miami was sort of close to this, but this is worse.
Yeah, because you had
this is worse in terms of market.
Because at that point you had Miami, which is
but you had Jokic, and Jokic was a phenomenon.
yes,
Jimmy Butler was again. I'm not the biggest,
but you had the
Jimmy
Heat
Butler guy.
brand,
Yeah,
which
the Heat.
which still has the brand because they also were in the finals a few years before that.
Right.
So they had still enough.
Still had something, and
left
Spoelstra's still coaching. And Jimmy Butler is
he's a known name.
he's a name that
And-
is a really terrific player, but he's not one of the great.
Yeah.
Despite what the ESPN thing, he's not the greatest.
But along with
Not
it,
one of the
you mentioned
greats.
the idea of people watching because they want to hate on something. The Heat have that with the Heat culture
They do.
stuff.
They do.
So they have people who want to watch the Heat lose.
Right.
So that you've got all the different crowds coming together. Oklahoma City doesn't really have that because it's been a long enough time
Nobody knows who these people
yeah,
are.
it's been a long enough time since the Russ, Paul George, Kevin Durant, James Harden, 10-year stretch.
Like Holmgren, they know because of Gonzaga.
yes.
Okay, it may have been one year, but he
yeah.
was at Gonzaga. Again, this is one of the mistakes the NBA has made. I mean, I completely understand the global brand. I got it. Okay, I got that. We're a global brand. Now, what have they done with the global brand? I have no idea. I think
Well,
they've sold merch.
And that is, I want to bring this up because we're getting to that.
They've sold merch.
Yes.
But at some point, I don't know quite what it means, but what you're getting is, and I've talked about this in the draft forever, I'm sure Richiche is a fine player. Okay? I'm sure Sarr is a fine player. But nobody knows who they are.
yeah.
Chet Holmgren may have only played at Gonzaga a year, but because he played at Gonzaga, which has now, to its credit, a national following, people know who he is. Okay? Williams, to be honest with you,
UC Santa Barbara,
Right.
right?
yeah, he's a gaucho.
They would
Right.
have known Shea because he played at Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's when they could know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? Halliburton played at Iowa State. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? But there's not a groundswell of known names. In other words, when this draft comes up, so I'll just fast forward for a moment. Cooper Flagg's going to be the first overall pick. But people know who he is.
Because he played at Duke and he was a star.
Okay? I mean, Cam Ward's the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Everybody always knows who the first overall pick in the draft is. Because it's college football. They're not going to Brazil to bring in somebody. They're not going to France